I would like to call to order the Health and Human Services Commission meeting. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Chairman Mitchell,
Present.
Vice Chair Kinner,
Present.
Commissioner Bory. Here. Commissioner Brennan,
Present.
Commissioner Danford,
Here.
and Commissioner Moeller.
Here.
You have a quorum, and Chairman.
Thank you. Item D on the agenda, 23-231, consideration of approval of agenda.
I so move that the agenda be approved.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Moeller,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item 23-236, consideration of approval of regular meeting minutes as of February 27th, 2023.
All of that was done under consent.
Oh, okay, so the entire consent agenda is
So
done.
yes, everything under consent is done in one motion, unless you want to pull it off to talk about anything.
Don't think we
So
want to talk about
you're
that today. Do we have any public hearings?
We have no public hearings this evening,
Okay. Do we have any old business?
no old business.
And moving on to new business, item 23-238, consideration of fiscal year 2023-2024 Health and Human Services funding recommendations to be presented to City Council at the May 15, 2023 work session.
So this is for your time. It deals with that spreadsheet on how you want to spread the wealth around. We can go back to the PowerPoint, which talks about where they would like to utilize the funding, which I think you're all very familiar with, but we can always refresh that if you like. Otherwise, your main goal this evening is to divvy up the $80,000 to where you feel most comfortable that benefits the nonprofits in the community. So we can start with either the PowerPoint or we can start with the funding. What you see here is each commissioner and their recommendation. All of you added up to the $80,000 at the end, and then my bottom one that's blank is where we can start plugging numbers in. And if you like an option, we can put option 1 up. And if you like another option, we can do 2. We can do a couple different options, and then we can vote on which one you like the best.
I think what we've done in years past is just take a moment to look at each person's recommendations and kind of why we felt the way we felt. And then also, if we can do like an average of everybody's recommendations and see if that adds up to 80,000, that also was a very helpful thing.
Okay. So you want an average?
Yeah, for each of these categories with each of our, if that adds up, then that might be the best way to allocate. But I'll go ahead and just take the ball on this one in terms of what I thought, and then I'll let everybody else have a chance to speak. First of all, I just wanted to say thanks for all the nonprofits, all the work that's being done. I think it was, as usual, tough to cut. We had $131,260 of requests, and we can only give out $80,000. So cuts had to be made, $51,260 out of it. Love to give everybody exactly what they asked for, but here we are with 6 agencies again. So when I was doing my math, I looked at Horizon Health and Wellness. That was a nice and easy project. I recommended the full funding for that. I did not have any metrics on the actual safety issues or safety concerns at the park at night. That's something that was missing. But I did check with the city. They can receive the funding and get receipts for it to start that project. And I thought it was a good thing to add to the city. So nice and easy recommendation. Boys and Girls Club, they originally pushed for $17,500 split between 2 different positions. They kind of sounded a lot similar to me, both positions, and they already received $15,000 from Pinal County. Plus they have access to other sources of funding, so I believe that we should just match what the county's doing for Boys and Girls Club. So I recommended $15,000. Food Bank I love the application, very strong application. Love Eric's presentation. Want to give them full funding every year, but I recommended 25,000 for that. Genesis project, love what they're doing. I think we're seeing a lot of results in what's been done with the navigator position. We've always been able to provide rent utilities. I don't want to see the navigator cut back too far, but I did recommend 20,000 of the request. Other side ministries, we finally got an itemized list. I hope everybody had a chance to review that. I recommended that they get the teaching expenses, the things that they needed for the program. So none of the outreach, none of the office supplies. So uniforms, the knives, the different supplies that they use specifically for the program teaching. So 7,540. And then finally with AJCDC, glad to get the actual numbers on the insurance. The total insurance cost was actually $1,978 with the receipts. That being said, the dump fees were $4,317.45. So those are also very important to what AJCDC is doing. I recommended $5,400 out of the funding, which would more than cover the insurance and a lot of the dump fees. I did see that they do have some excess revenue above and beyond expenses, so that should help cover, and it won't be in a situation where they won't be able to provide the dump fees. So other items like the A-frames and marketing decals and things like that, I didn't think were good administrative overhead type things to put into this particular funding request. So that was my position on that. And I don't know if anybody else wanted to go through and justify what they felt about their numbers.
Oh, I can. So Boys and Girls Club, I did recommend 8,000, very similar to your thought process. I think they do have other sources of funding. So I did want to kind of focus on some of these other groups. AJCDC, enough to cover their insurance. Genesis, I'm with you. The Navigator program, I think, has been really valuable. Horizon, I am recommending almost the full amount for them. I really do think that there's not a lot of maybe no or low cost options of family type things in this area, and those lights I think are going to be amazing for that particular space. Other side ministries, 7,000, help with that there, and food bank. I see the traffic in and out of there pretty much a lot, and there's just a need, I think, in this community still.
Okay, so I'm going to go somewhat out of order other than start with Boys and Girls Club. My basic premise on them was that they had numerous things that they listed in their document. The ACEs scores, the issue with people progressing, and I wanted information on how many people in each category were progressing. When you look at data on people that drop out of school, the common time to drop out is 16 to 24 years old. Now, obviously, that transcends high school. The majority are males over females, and minority groups fare worse than others. But nonetheless, that wasn't really embedded in their information that they gave us. So I have no idea what sort of success rate they have in dealing with academic deficiencies. And since Pinell County in 2020 said that it was one of the fourth major risk factors overall to the population at large, it seemed that's pretty important and should be emphasized. I'm sure I'm viewed as somewhat of an elitist. I do believe education is liberating, power to the people, but at the same time, I don't believe everybody needs to go to university. But what's tragic is community college fallout without some assistance is 60%. And there's a way to deter that by having ongoing mentoring and other things. Before I was a medical director to a New Leaf, I had no knowledge of EVIT. After I did that, I was impressed. That's a really viable program, but I don't see where that's being encouraged. And so that's why I dropped it. I believe they wanted 32,000, and I trimmed it to 20. I thought that they had value, but in hearing other people, I think the other thing that I thought about was they are a national organization and they have resources available to them that other people do not have. And I think that that ought to play a role, and I'd be willing to modify my 20,000. AJCDC, I believe, is pretty close. But I want to know why the city won't work with you, especially with Republic Services. They have a blanket deal that requires that people in Apache Junction use their service. They ought to be talking to you about a discount. And I don't know if they give you a discount or not, but they ought to. And, I just talked to somebody over there about their plan to raise the fees. And I explained that AJ has a poverty rate of 13.9% of the population. I don't know how those people can afford that. Okay, so nonetheless, you got pretty much what you wanted. It's my belief that when you commission for brick memorials, that's really kind of a misrepresentation on your debit sheet, because people pay in advance for that. Is that correct? They do. We just repair them. Okay, thanks. You put it in place. Right. No, it's in place. We just keep the lettering clean. Okay, thanks. All right. And the other one is, I really don't believe that Arizona, you have the AJ, the commission, the commission that you're part of. No, the city. Chamber of Commerce. Okay, your dues for Chamber of Commerce and for Arizona Corporation Commission, they aren't really required for you to do what you do. Isn't that correct? Well, the Chamber's marketing, the Corporation Commission, yes, is required. Is required, okay, then my error. Okay, but the Chamber is simply an association that benefits you, I'm sure, but it's not a requirement for you to do what you do. I have to have a medical license to practice, but I don't have to be necessarily a member of the American Psychiatric Association. That's something I choose to do because of what it offers me and the education and other stuff, plus the added credentials that I've got. Does that make sense? It does. We get a lot of business exposure to the chamber. Fair enough. Okay, that's a good retort.
And also probably partnerships too, I would imagine, also marketing. The marketing portion is what keeps a lot of us nonprofits out there in public. Public awareness.
And that's a good retort as well. So it gives you some presence and some awareness by the populace at large of what is available. I apologize to you all, I should have put this on the cone of silence. At any rate, Genesis, the very first book of the Bible. Pretty much, but my concerns were that you delineated appropriately a couple of things, and I need to know a couple of things. You talk about bringing people in, and it's really appropriate, to deal with the environmental issues and heat frustration, meaning, people have, they get nauseous from heat exposure, but the real issue is whether or not they have sunstroke, okay? Because that can be lethal. And we talked about whether or not there's a way to triage by virtue of using a thermometer that can then do that. Have you incorporated that?
I think I gave out 20 bottles of sunscreen last week. So sunscreen is something that we request from donors consistently, that heat pit control out of nowhere. I also have some. I'm going to interrupt you. Hold on.
Trinity, can you come down to the mic, because this is being recorded? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so sunscreen, I gave out over 20 bottles last week of that.
But that doesn't block heat stroke.
No, but you just asked about sunscreen, so I was addressing that.
No, I asked about a thermometer?
Oh, yeah, I have one. I have 2 of them.
No, I know, but do you use them to triaging means that you assess people for how severely ill they are.
I have not had anyone present with any heat-related issues that would require triage at this point, but I did take your suggestion and put it into practice, and we do have 2 of those thermometers should that arise.
Okay. I'm just suggesting that's a good way to do 2 things. Number 1, triage to see if somebody really needs to be referred to an urgent care or a hospital, and number 2, demonstrate the effectiveness of your intervention. Because if they come in with a temp of 103 and they leave at 98, then you did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. But how many people does that accommodate? I never learned that. That facility is limited by virtue of its space. So how many people can you have in there without violating the fire code?
So the waiting room, or the lounge as I call it, we have space for 6 people to be in there at one time right now.
Okay, forgive me, but boy, I've been out in the heat just even lately, and I don't know if I needed your services, but nonetheless, I'm sure there are a lot of people, as there was a recent article about the homeless rate increasing in Apache Junction, and they far exceed 6 people. So,
So in the purpose of this grant and what we wrote it for is for navigator services. It's not just focused on heat relief. We're part of the heat relief network and that type of stuff. But no, there is not a building in Apache Junction that is going to house all of the homeless people for the length of the summer or during the hottest parts of the day. So what we do is our very best and, give priority to those people. What you will find in research is that people who live outdoors acclimate to that temperature. So their bodies are way more acclimated than you and I. I go from my air-conditioned house to my air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned building and then back to my air-conditioned car and then back there. So my time in the sun is going to affect me much more greatly than someone who's not experiencing those ups and downs of temperature, of being in a temperature-controlled 72 degrees and then being outside in 118. So their acclimation to that is much different than housed individuals.
And the Salvation Army does also have a heat relief program. At the Battle of the Badges, the softball game between police and fire, they were announcing, Captain Malone was there, and they were handing out bottles of water to everybody and announcing the heat relief program. So I think we also played a role in that with the swamp coolers and things that we provided funding for 2 years ago. So,
okay, good. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and we have mister systems that are running too. So I've got mister systems that go during that whole time as well.
Okay, the other issue that I broached was the issue of how many people were going to be kicked off of access. And that started April 1st. That's where your navigator plays a real strategic role. How active has that been?
So I actually just opened a letter for someone today who was unable to open his mail. I opened it and he was automatically re-enrolled. We're getting a lot, like tons and tons of mail from DES. So yeah, we're on top of that and making sure that people are aware that they need to reapply and then following up with any mail they receive from DES in regards to access and SNAP benefits as well.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
All right. Anybody else? I don't have any further questions for Genesis. I'm moving on to Deuteronomy.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think Exodus was the next one, but that's okay.
Okay.
Wait, so now, outside ministries, you all had modified it to 10, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I wanted to give you all of it, but as we have limited resources and the amount of individuals that you serve, you were talking about 4 sessions, I believe, with a grand total of about 20 people total, is that correct?
So we have 3 sessions, June, July, and August, and we hope to have between 5 to 10 individuals for each of those sessions as well.
Okay,
So-
so about 15 possible total.
Yeah, hopefully 30, but yeah, 15 to 30, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I fudged down a little bit. I'm sorry, I wish that we had an additional 20 to 30,000, because I would have decided that was more than appropriate
Thank you.
for you to get the 10. And by the way, your proposal was well-written. Thanks. I appreciated that too. Okay, thanks.
One quick question though, while you're at it. The outreach food and the food expenses for teaching, I think I have that correct. 7,540, what I came up with was the food expenses for teaching, meals for participants, uniforms, small tools and supplies, right? The outreach and office supplies were above and beyond that.
Yes,
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
When they resubmitted their application that you asked, Bill, the information on the breakdown from the 19,000 to the 10,000, this is the total amount that they came up with. I just kind of rounded up, so we're at 10,001.
Yeah, the food expenses were also divided into the food expenses for the participants in the class, and then outreach, which in my mind, outreach is more like marketing activities and stuff. So again, I kind of drew the line there when I made the recommendation, but that's,
And I
Me.
just combined the two.
yeah, that's what that is.
Okay, my last, the food bank. I thought you were very deserving, that you serve the greatest population of any organization. Okay, you do. And I believe your numbers are accurate. And so, again, I wish there were more resources. I tried to preserve as much as yours as possible, and I believe I'd written down 32, but it is 30, so that's okay. But, close but no cigar. All right, thanks.
Dr. Brennan, if I may follow up on a couple of things. You mentioned the Boys and Girls Club, and I know that they talked about that they do have individuals there that help the children finish their homework so that when they get home, they don't have that burden on their plate as well. So I did want to mention that our economic development person works with our school district and with EVIT and with Central Arizona College and with the programs to help the high schoolers roll into, say, the trades. And CAC has a new program. It's Wilson Electric, I believe. And so they've constructed a building that will be ready for wiring. And so the students will use that structure to learn how to be an electrician. So they have that, and there's another one coming. I just can't say what that is at this time. But our economic development side is working more along after high school and instead of college. So they're working on trade schools and getting more of that out here to CA, Central Arizona College.
I think that's really admirable. There's a real place, and people don't realize that those can be quite beneficial, especially if you have a passion for it. And that's what I always told residents when they came to me and they were starting their first day in psychiatry. They said, look, if you don't love this is going to be penance. So look at what you love. The one thing that I didn't ask, and maybe you know, Jennifer, is last year, CAC and the other Pinal community colleges, because of COVID, offered an entire year of free tuition.
Ooh.
Has that been continued in any form? Do we know?
I do not know.
Okay, that would be worth looking at. And then I'll get to something at the end on what's available via NAU. And I went through a little bit of penance and did the PAT run, and that has a scholarship. And so for veterans, they can get their tuition paid for completely via the Pat Tillman Foundation. So do you mind, Jeff, if I hit the two issues with NAU?
Do you want to quickly make those announcements towards the end when we talk about other community things?
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, just because we're on topic with
Yeah.
our discussion of funding for these particular organizations.
Okay.
Any other commissioners like to make a? Yep.
First thing that struck me when I looked at the dollars here, excuse me, is it's a shame we don't have enough to fund everybody that needs it. So looking at that, I kind of prioritized what I thought was the biggest need in the community. And to me, hands down, the food bank is the most important. There are too many people that are food stressed in this town, in this area, and we need to do what we can to help them out. And unfortunately, in some of my younger years, I was in a position where I had to take advantage of some of those programs, or we didn't eat very much. And I gave the whole 50,000 that they asked for. Well, that's my vote. So the money that I was left with, I had to divide up between the other organizations. I do notice that I put 15,000 for other side, and I think I intended to put 10. So I got $5,000 to play with. Horizon, I love the community park. I think it's awesome out there. I've spent some time out there. I love the community garden, but I really didn't think that our resources should go to buying lights for that park. I think that there's other funding available. There's some grants, probably grants you can get out there. So I had to say no to that. Boys and Girls Club, I think they do a great job. I've had several nephews and nieces involved in their programs, but they do get a lot of funding. They have a great fundraiser every year. They have a lot of outside funding, and again, with limited funding that we have, I kind of like to put my resources where I think they're going to do the most good and the most needed. So again, with Boys and Girls Club, sorry, I shut you out. AJCD, DC, I love what you do, so I did allocate 6,000 out of the 64 you asked for. I do think you do a great service. There are a lot of people, I hesitate to say old because I think I'm one of them, but there are a lot of elderly folks in the community that do need help. And I think you guys do a great job helping them out and doing what you do. Genesis Project, fortunately I didn't have enough money to play with. Ran out of funds. But I do have an extra 5,000.
We
So
can-
I would vote to give Genesis that extra
Another
five,
You
if
bet.
you want to change that. And then change the other side to 10.
I do.
Again, like I said, I wish we had more money. It would be nice if we had more money available to fund everybody that needed it or that was requesting it. But, so there's my choices.
I'm going to go ahead and step in there. So I did 15,000 to Boys and Girls Club. And kids are near and dear to my heart, and I want to see these kids, succeed at, whatever path they want to take. The AJCDC, 4,000, I would have loved to have given them the full 6,400. But then I had Genesis that, with food and help with homeless, Horizon, mental health. And I did work an event in the evening, and I understand the lighting issues there at night. So I gave them 5,000. And then other side ministry, of course, to education for, job skills for young people or seniors too in that category, I think was important for me also. Food bank, got the balance then of 39,000. And like I say, I would like to have given the full amount to each of these organizations because they all do phenomenal work. And if anybody out there wants a good organization to work with, all of these organizations are top-notch and can always use more help out there.
You don't want to elaborate? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for taking the time out to go through that. We need to come to a consensus before we put it up to a vote. So this is where the fun begins. The first thing that we do is often just to do a simple average. I think that looking at the average, we have 11,991 for Boys and Girls Club, 5,010 for HACDC, 16,623.33 Genesis, 4,118.33 for Horizon, 7,256.67 for Other Side, and 35,000 for the food bank. Before putting that up to a vote, I actually have two problems with it, and Danford brought up an interesting point. Either the Horizon, it's either all or nothing. That project, they have their funding recommendation, it has to be 7,060, or I would vote not to fund it at all and use those monies for other things. So because it's really, they've already done the pricing, they've already had the engineering done. So that's one problem. The second thing is, if that money goes to Genesis for 16,623, the navigator is going to be the thing that gets cut, and I think we've seen a lot of results. So I'd like to see those two either go up to full funding or up a little bit more before putting that up to a vote, but that's just me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Jennifer, could you did the averages down at the bottom, could you total those averages up, total those numbers up then under the total column?
79,999.
Okay, I thought it came to about 80 grand.
Yep. So it's right up there. Yeah, it's
Okay.
roughly that. Yep.
Well, I agree with you about the Horizon funding. They're asking for 7. If we're only willing to give 4, I'd be willing to scrap that and give it to somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's a good project, though. The thing is,
Well, I think they're all good
Yeah.
projects. That's the problem
Well,
we have here.
not that I'm saying it's the most priority over everything else, but what I'm saying is in terms of the way the funding works, they're not going to be here every year asking for that.
Right.
It's sort of a one-off project, and this is a good forum for them to do that. They actually haven't been in front of us the last 2 years, so for them to come to us, they're looking for that grant. We're technically their source of grant for that funding, like what you were saying, Jeff. Go get funding, that's why they're here, you know? So, I don't know, I still think it should be full funding, but that's,
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
With option 1, I got you at full funding for Horizon, which I think they said 70-60. I'd have to go back and look at Abby on their
Yeah,
application.
70-60 is the full
And-
funding, and it, like I said, either has to be all or nothing, because that's the bid, they already have it priced out.
And how about Genesis? So these options, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is where we get to play with the money and shuffle it around, and you can look and we can adjust and tweak all you want until you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
Is the full amount is 22? Okay. Does that cover the full navigator position, or is there anything extra in there? Is the full 22? Okay. No? Okay, give me navigator salary. Okay. And that's the
That
base-
9,600 would keep the
the-
Navigator program going.
That's the base minimum for the navigator, but there's also rent and utilities included in the 22.8, so let's keep that in mind, but this is the bare
Yeah.
minimum.
And traditionally,
two.
we funded those two, the rent and utilities, we funded that every year for the last few years, so I don't see any reason to stop that. The question is, if that 9,600 amount is cut, that means they're probably gonna have to cut hours for navigator position. I think there was a lot of results there. That being said, even I didn't go up to the full 22,800, because I figured that if they're gonna make a cut, well, that's a reasonable cut, it's not cutting the whole thing together, you know what I mean?
Jennifer, can you plug in like 20?
For
there,
Genesis,
For Genesis,
Yep.
yeah, let's
we're gonna do
kind
that
of play
there.
with that.
I'm gonna do it down in option 2.
Okay.
Michelle, do you mind on option 2 to scratch Horizon and make that 0?
Okay, got it.
Well, myself personally, I'd like to see a little higher in Genesis with Horizon full amount, honestly.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm with
So, Michelle, say that again.
20 for Genesis and leave Horizon at the 70, 60.
Okay, so there's you got without, and there you have with.
I think other side, the average is coming out pretty decently, so let's put that in.
And I'm just gonna round up. Where would you like to go with the food bank on option 1?
Let's do the AJ CDC for the average there, 50-10, and whatever you've got left for the food bank. I'm not mathematical.
Okay.
Work your Excel magic.
Well,
I think we pull down the average for Boys and Girls Club, and then whatever's left, food bank, under that option 1.
Oopsie. Hang on, let me, us with this one. Where did that go? I just lost something.
They were asking for
They're
50,
asking
right?
50.
Yeah.
Still too high.
Because the option one, you're leaving Boys and Girls Club blank there.
But that's leaving B and G at 0, Michelle, is that, because
I
you
don't
said,
think any of
because
us,
you said put
I
the rest.
wouldn't, yeah, I keep going back, you know, same
Because
with
we don't-
Commissioner Danford and
Mhm.
Mitchell.
Because we don't have anything on the youth side. If you look at these other nonprofits, you have nothing for youth.
Mhm. Yeah, that's my inclination too, is the demand has been up for Boys and Girls Club as well since they moved to the new facility. I think they got 11,000 last year. I gotta double check that.
Are we seeing the results? I'm,
Did I not, let me pull up one more spreadsheet, because this will tell you, where do I have it? Okay, so this gives you a representation of the organizations that have applied in the past. This is an older one, so we can add in Other Side Ministries here. But this fiscal year 22-23, the top number is what was requested. The bottom number is what the commission decided upon for each of these organizations.
Yeah, so Boys and Girls Club had 11,580.
Mhm. So if we did the average 11,000, what was it?
Let me go back.
And we're kind of
So Boys and Girls
similar
Club.
with 11,991 on the average.
Right.
I'm going to round up. And I'm just plugging some numbers in here.
about 34,000, a little more.
Right, but that's including the zero here for, and that would change, right?
For Horizon.
For
So these are
That's
just,
if we decided not to fund it altogether,
Right.
which right now,
Really be my choice, to be honest.
well,
I mean, it's lighting, and that's,
interesting.
that's not insignificant, but
mhm.
its impact relative to other organizations. And the individual that was here said that they would be able to do that if we didn't come up with anything.
But I think all of our organizations say that too, because these projects are really dear to their hearts and, to this community's needs.
Heather, what do you think about that? Because I think Commissioner Kenner and Judy and myself are all about kind of all for funding it. I think it's either all or nothing. I'd like to know your opinion on that one, the Earth Heart Park.
I think that the community will benefit from it, especially because they had mentioned, and I talked to a couple people from Parks and Recreation, and so that was just one organization that would utilize it if it was actually lit, and so it was more available during the evening for outside activities. So I would go for funding it.
Even gardening at night.
Oh, yeah, when the
I mean,
weather is
when the
hot
weather
during the
is-
day and it's cooler at nighttime.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
get out there and,
So 4 of us would want to fund it, and because it's all for nothing, I don't know. I would lean that direction.
I would go with the majority then,
Mhm.
and fund it fully.
Yeah, I was gonna say if we're split, then we really gotta,
I can bite my tongue.
yeah. But I agree with you, Commissioner Danford. I don't think it's the number one priority. I just think it's a tidy project that would be
one time.
one-off and a pretty good one for that. So,
Yeah, and we're here to do a consensus of what everybody thinks. I mean, that's, we're not all gonna get our way here, so I would go with the majority on that one and fully fund it.
And I do like how you pointed out where they didn't ask for anything previously. This was just a one thing specific. But I do think that the community will benefit from it.
And as a gardener who tends to, starting in July 1st, I'll be doing my gardening at midnight because it's too hot.
yeah.
I don't garden in the daytime in the summertime. I do all my with a flashlight and out there gardening, so, and some people know what my garden looks like. So, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that.
So Jennifer, with option 3, if we bring the average down for Boys and Girls Club, the average down for AGCDC, we stick with what's recommended for Genesis and Horizon, and then we use that average for other side, what's left over for the food bank?
So you want Genesis to remain at
At
22?
the
Horizon.
option 3, it was 20,000.
Oh, you-
Or are you gonna you're putting full funding in?
Full funding in there, full funding for Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just plugging in, this was full funding, we're at 87 already. So we can adjust, where would you like to adjust? I'm 7,000 over here.
Yeah, so I think we were at 20,000 for Genesis and option 3 before, and then I wanted to see with AJCDC being the average 50-10, what does that leave us for food bank?
Nothing, you're.
So we have to minus 9,326 from that 40,000.
So we're roughly around, which I'm just a little bit over. these numbers.
30,674.
And this formula should actually be reducing the amount, so that by the time I get here, after these fill in, this should be actually reducing, so. But you asked for a sum at the end. Sorry about that.
So 30,674 would be the answer right there. So if we stuck with option 3, we've come down a bit on Boys and Girls Club. We've come up to fully fund Horizon. Genesis stays where it was. Her other side stays where it was. But we're still below what everybody wanted to do for the food bank. So, discussion.
So, Art, I appreciate that people want to fully fund Horizon. She said that if they had resources to deal with 12 lights versus the others that they have, which would be about 80% of that. So would the committee be willing to talk about 5,000 for Horizon?
I thought Horizon was all or nothing.
That's what I thought too, because
That's
of the
impression
bid.
I had.
Yeah, the impression I had when I read the grant application was they've already had the bid taken. So it's basically just as soon as funding is in, project starts. So I think it's all or nothing.
That's the take I had on it too.
They might have to modify it. So I'm either 70-60 or 0, and I lean more towards 70-60.
Okay. And as had been said numerous times, they all have worthy efforts that are in need of resources. I just would like to be able to add to the food bank a little bit because, as I said, when you look at the services it provides the broadest spectrum of services to the greatest number.
Yeah, but if we look at option 4, at 40,000, what did we fund food bank for last year?
31, wasn't it 31?
The food bank last year,
30,000.
we funded them at 30.
See, if we're looking at option 4, we've actually given them an increase over what we did last year, which I think is appropriate to meet the need, because we all know that there's a lot of hungry people out here.
But I thought that they only provided 62% towards Apache Junction community itself. 62 or 64, wasn't that what's in that report?
Does it matter where they live if they're hungry?
No, I mean, there's other communities that they can go to, especially if they don't live in this community.
With option 4, we cut the navigator salary. And so that means we lose some results. The only way I would want option 4 to go through is if we pulled from possibly Boys and Girls Club because they have other sources of funding. So I wouldn't vote for option 4. I like option 3 as it stands.
So
I'm with
Chairman Mitchell,
Agree.
just to
Yes.
clarify, in Genesis' request, the 9,600 listed in option 1 is the bare minimum, which keeps the navigator, Trinity? Because that's
That is his salary. We
his salary.
previously requested the funding for the Community Resource Center and added his salary last year. So yeah, that is his salary. The rest of it is the Community Resource Center that provides the office spaces for the entire community organizations to come in and provide services.
Okay.
Yeah, it might cut some of the hours that he might be able to do if that funding remains constant, but, you know, we got to make cuts somewhere, but I don't want to cut that navigator out altogether. I think that's way too important. Especially because we have seen results from it. I think that that's compelling when we present that to council. I'm still on the option 3 train.
I would agree.
Well,
Anybody want to shuffle numbers somewhere?
I'm gonna be a real pain here. Take money from the Boys and Girls Club and give it to the food bank.
In option 3, thus creating something a little bit different.
I would go for that.
So what would you like?
Take away the Boys and Girls Club money and give it to, on option 3, add it to the food bank.
Option 3, take away the 10?
Yes, ma'am. Again, I'm not anti-kid. I've raised some kids. I love the program. But I think that they do have, in terms of funding, they have a pretty good foothold on funding, a pretty good foundation for other funding. And I'd rather see the money go to the food bank.
What about having the average of 35,000 at the food bank, which brought it, because before we had 30,674 in option 3, but that way we can still give some funding to the Boys and Girls Club.
Can you repeat that?
So option 3, we just moved all the money from the Boys and Girls Club over to the food bank. And my proposal was to see what it looks like if we had 35,000 go to the food bank and the remaining amount go to Boys and Girls
Okay,
Club.
let's see what that looks like.
You want 35 there for
Yeah.
the food bank?
Yes, ma'am.
You want the 70-60 for
Yes.
Verizon? And you would like, how much for Boys and Girls?
Well, all the numbers in option 3 remain the same. It's just that we made the food bank 35,000, and then we have some funding for the Boys and Girls Club. So 20,000 for
20
Genesis,
Yeah.
50-10 for CDC.
Where am I at? Am I wrong?
So on option 5 there, what you were doing was
Late.
20,000 for Genesis, 50-10 for CDC. And then what remains would be, oh, and then other side was still 72.56.
Yeah, so it isn't 20,000 for boys and girls, it's 20,000 for Genesis.
That's correct.
All right,
Right.
and I'm sorry, you want Genesis for
20,000.
20?
Genesis 20,000, AJCDC 50-10, and then make Boys and Girls Club a 0, and then let's see what funding they would have left over. So 80,000 minus 74, 326 equals,
About
So
550.
5,674 dollars.
and then make that 74, yep. So that would be allocating what the consensus average was for the food bank. That would be full funding basically for Horizon and close to full funding for Genesis, adequate funding for CDC and other side, and then we still allocate some money for Boys and Girls Club. So I would approve that.
I would go for that.
Agree.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Judy?
Still think Boys and Girls Club needs to be a little higher, but I don't know where we would take it from,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Do we want to bring option 5 up for a vote?
You know, any of these organizations, when they're out there writing grants, they have to show some kind of commitment from the city to qualify for some of these grants. Not all of these organizations are able to get grants without some backing of city monies. And so that, I think, we need to think about too.
You know, the only report would be that because it's a national organization and they did list that, I think, unless I'm misremembering, they only get 3% of the national funding for them, if I.
May I ask what, I know you do an annual fundraiser, a big annual fundraiser for Boys and Girls Club.
Yesteryear.
What do they typically bring in for that?
They brought in over $100,000. I attended the event. It was a Mardi Gras themed event, so we went and yeah, that was over 100,000. They do an extremely good job with that fundraiser.
Oh, I know, they've
you
come a
know,
long way.
We had, I think, 3 or 4 councilmen that attended. Bryant Powell was there. Hopefully Senator Mark Lamb will be there. You know, those are the type people that we have. So there was quite a
I'm sorry, Senator.
former Sheriff Mark Lamb, but he's running for Senate now. So
He's still.
that was
He's still not Senator.
that was Jeff Surtees' comment too. Hopefully Senator. But we have I don't know. I like the option 5 here being kind of a consensus one. I think Judy, you're the only one who didn't agree on that. But if we were to make any changes to Boys and Girls Club, where would we fund it?
Yeah, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do we want to bring option 5 up for a vote and allocate those dollar amounts?
Yes.
So I gave you option 6 too. The formula works down, so the $80,000, we work backwards. If you keep full funding pretty much for Horizon, you've got just a little reduction in Genesis, but still not quite double for the navigator salary plus the extras. There's that as well. Like I said, you can play with your numbers and tweak just a little bit.
So the only difference there is essentially funding was taken from the Genesis project to put into Boys and Girls Club because all the other numbers were the same.
Yep, the numbers are pretty well the same. You've just borrowed from Genesis too, yes.
See, my biggest thing on that, Judy, is I think in terms of the scalability of the fundraiser, Boys and Girls Club has a lot more resources available to them. It's harder, I don't believe it would be possible to have an event of that scale with Genesis. So that's why I would not support 6, I'd support 5, mainly because of just the 2 organizations side by side. Not to say I don't have confidence in Trinity's abilities to fundraise, but you know.
Well,
Yeah.
it takes anywhere,
Yeah.
Jennifer, what would be the actual total for option 6?
You're at $80,000, and this 0 just gets me down. So what I did, this adds up, but this will help, this formulas that I have here actually works with my 80,000, and the more I change the numbers, all it does is tell me. So if I put in 12,500, it tells me what I have left in the negative to spend.
Okay.
So that's what that did. I do believe, and I wish Boys and Girls Club was here, I think they got 100,000, does anyone recall? The 100,000 for the yesteryear fundraiser.
Yeah, I was at the event and they did make that announcement that it was 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
and just so we're clear on the fundraising portion of this, I mean, it takes 10 to 20 years to build up that kind of a fundraiser. And it took a lot of hard work on everybody's part to get to that point.
That's true, but they are at that point.
They are at that point.
Yeah.
And they have 350 individuals that they serve.
Right.
That's what they said.
I'd like to bring option 5 to a vote.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so that was Commissioner Kinner and Danford, second. All right, Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Commissioner Moeller,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell?
Yes.
Then you are unanimous. Option 5 it is.
Okay.
All right, so I believe the next step is to present that at the city council meeting on May 15th, right, Jennifer? Do you have any other guidance?
Yes, it is a work study session on the 15th. You will present the options to council at that meeting. They will not be approving their budget until June, at which point, if they have any changes, they'll make it during budget, but historically, they've never made changes to your recommendation. And then the contracts will become effective July 1. So after they approve the budget, we will draft up the contracts, list the services within the contract and the dollar amounts.
What time is that meeting with council? I just want to make sure I'm there.
7 p.m. on Monday, the 15th.
At this location?
Yes.
Okay. And then if they have any questions, we just go over how we got to that recommendation for each of these.
Yep.
Okay.
They've gotten really picky about what services are they providing, making sure that they're not overlapping services, which this community works really good amongst themselves with a lot of communication, making sure that they try not to overlap services a little bit here and there. But I think Trinity and there was another person that spoke to the communication that they do, trying to prevent the overlap.
Okay, that's perfect. So going into item H on the agenda, information reports, 23-243, announcement of community events. So we're kind of in that slow season as far as events go. I know that I'll just make the usual invitations. We have our Kiwanis Club meeting on Thursday, April 27th at 6 p.m. That is at the Salvation Army headquarters at 605 North Broadway. The Rotary Club would love to have everybody attend. They meet every Wednesday at noon at the Gold Canyon Golf Resort. So the next meeting would be April 26th. And the Apache Junction Homeless Coalition is on May 4th, so may the 4th be with you, at 9:30 a.m. And we will meet at the Multi-Gen Center. So those are the only upcoming events I'm aware of as far as different organizations and meetings. If anybody else has anything to add. If any of the nonprofits have any events too, feel free to come up and make the announcements.
But-
Yeah.
If you guys would like to volunteer, Saturday, May 13th is the USPS, United States Postal Service Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. And the postal carriers will be grabbing the canned foods from people's mailboxes and swinging them by the food bank for our volunteers to sort, weigh, check expirations, and then categorize it inside our warehouse so that it could be given out throughout the summer. This is a partnership that we have had with the U.S. Postal Service for many, many, many years, going back to 1991. In our archives, we do pay for the bags and the advertising for the community to get involved with this, but the yield is pretty well. So we need strong arms. If you guys would like to join us that Saturday morning, we will be there from 9 a.m. till 4:30 that day, taking in the food. And then put on your calendar, July 8th is a Saturday. We are going to be having a birthday party for the food bank. It's our 40th birthday, and we will be having cake and punch for the community to come and enjoy. We had our event last week at Barlean's, and that was a little more expensive, so our clients could not partake in that. But this is going to be for our clients to come and really celebrate with the food bank with a little bit of cake and punch, and just, be grateful that we've been around for 40 years.
And location?
It's at the food bank.
At the food bank?
Yep.
Okay.
What time was that event, Eric? The birthday party event was that?
It's going to be at the food bank, July 8th, it's a Saturday.
What time?
We haven't set the time yet, but it's probably going to be in the evening time because I'm trying to, because we don't have any signage on our building, so I'm trying to unveil a sign that says food bank so people know that we're there. Right now, we're just a big gray building in the Pinal County complex, and people drive around and drive around and drive around. So I'm trying to get a sign that says food bank so we can do a little bit of unveiling on our 40th birthday.
Eric, what was the date of the USPS event?
That is 2 weeks from now. It's Saturday, May 13th. And it's always the second Saturday in May.
Thank you.
Day before Mother's Day.
Okay, so moving on to item I, staff liaisons report.
I don't think I have anything to report at this time.
Okay.
We're just on track. And you are correct, we are rolling into the summer months, and so Park and Rec is doing more indoors and the pool rather than any outdoor activities.
Do we have another meeting on May 22nd, or is the next meeting of the commission just going to be on the 15th to deal with council with the recommendations?
So if I have a quorum of, if all of you come, or if I get 4 of you coming, please let me know. All of you do not need to be present. It is a regularly scheduled council meeting work session. At this point, we have Health and Human Services reserving the 4th Monday of every month for meetings, but at this time moving forward, we won't have meetings for a while. Unless the commission has something that they want to bring to the chairman, and the chairman will reach out to us.
So I'm sorry, for clarification, we are to attend the meeting on the 15th or on the 22nd in May?
Chairman Mitchell will attend the meeting on the 15th. It is up to you, or if you wish to come.
Okay.
But it is a city council meeting.
Yeah, Heather, in the past, sometimes if they have a lot of questions, well, the one time I did do the presentation was quite heated, so there was a lot of questions that came up. And so I had
Well,
somebody else from the commission step up to help too. But I think we've got a pretty good rationale here. I kind of understand where everybody was coming from, and I like the consensus that we came to today. So thanks, guys, for that. So without picking the specific meeting date and time, I'll just go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Yeah.
So I want to let people know about 2
Oh.
things.
Sorry, Dr. Brendan.
Okay, so Northern Arizona University is offering 2 options that I think are really rather remarkable, especially when you consider what the Board of Regents did with tuition. So they announced on the 17th of November of last year that Native American undergraduates can attend Northern Arizona University tuition-free starting in the fall of 2023. They also added that as of the fall of 2023 or spring of 2024, incoming freshmen or transfer students classified as dependent students determined by the FAFSA, meaning it's a standard to see whether or not you have economic eligibility, and your parents' combined adjusted gross income is $65,000 or less, will have free tuition. That's a bonus bingo, guys.
and that was the announcement from NAU.
Yeah. I mean,
I did hear on the radio that the feds are looking at policy to stop writing off the student loan program, so never know what they're going to do with this either. But if this is an NAU thing, then
yeah, that should be really helpful. And as I said, for anybody that's a veteran, the Pat Tillman Foundation does subsidize full tuition, as I understand it. And I had some data as I did the run, and it's pretty remarkable. They'll go all the way through a PhD if that's what you want.
okay. I did have one announcement for our nonprofits, is that council does like to see you in the audience the day that he's recommending the appropriations, just a heads up. They may have questions for you, so be prepared for that. Like he said, the last couple of years they've been very vocal. They've been very vocal, lots of questions.
That was May 15th at 7?
Yes, but you'll get an email from us as well. No, it's at 7, sorry, because it's city council. So it's a city council meeting on May 15th, and those start at 7 p.m. That'll be in this chamber, yep. But you will get an email from us with the agenda as well. just to let you know. And that's all I have. Thank you.
So, can I add?
Yeah, sure.
This announcement didn't say that you had to be in attendance as a resident, meaning that you went there to go to school. You may be able to do online classes through NAU with this provision. So just scope it out, see if that's true. It'd be worth the deal.
Well, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the Health and Human Services meeting at 6:06 PM.